Welcome to the Back in Time podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Autry, joined as always by my co-host, JD. JD, how we doing tonight, man?
Fantastic. I'm super excited about tonight's episode, audience. We've been promoting it. We've been getting this ready to go and to percolate. And Kyle, why don't we just jump in and introduce our guest of honor?
Yeah, absolutely. So joining us tonight on the podcast is the director of The Last Blockbuster, which is streaming right now up on Netflix. And Taylor, we're excited to have you on the show, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
All right, awesome. Well, yeah, we're both big fans of the movie, and we're going to talk all about that here during the episode. But it was a great trip down memory lane of being a kid from the 90s and early part of 2000. So job well done to you and the rest of the team with putting it together.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. So I wanted to start just, kind of get to know you a little bit. And we've kind of emailed back and forth. But now, where are you located? Are you out in California?
I am in Bend, Oregon right now, which is where The Last Blockbuster is. I've lived here for about 6 years now.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. I actually have a coworker that lives in Bend, Oregon. So small world, huh?
Yeah.
So very cool. So obviously, that's probably how you ended up getting into the movie, which we'll touch on, but take us back to childhood. Now, where did you end up growing up?
So my parents split when I was real young, and I split my time during the school year. I lived in San Francisco, and then I spent my summers up here in Oregon in a real small town in the middle of nowhere, fishing and camping and hiking and all that. So
that's cool.
City boy, country boy.
Nice.
There you go. So we get into to high school. Were you already somebody who was into filmmaking? Were you doing that as a kid with the old camcorders?
No. We my family never had a lot of money to buy camcorders or fancy things like that. And if they did, I would have insisted on a Nintendo instead. So
right.
I never had access to a video camera until high school, and I went to high school up here in Oregon at a very, very small school. There were 16 kids in my graduating class.
Oh, wow.
And I was one of them. But the school had one VHS camcorder that if you were working on a school project, you could check that out from the school and use it for the project. And I found out that if you could schedule your projects for the weekend, you could take it home on Friday and bring it back Monday. And that was sort of what got me interested in video cameras and filmmaking and editing. And at that time, you would edit by using two VCRs plugged into each other, and you'd pause on one and record on the other and do all that. So
I know that well.
Yeah, that was the beginning, and that was in the mid 90s.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
I remember that technology. That was so much fun.
Yeah. You thought you were cheating the system. I figured it out. If you plug this input into that output, oh my gosh. And I even had it so where, you could plug the audio cables in separately, and you could hook up your Walkman and play, your cassette tape and add music while you were doing the editing. It was really fancy.
Yeah, I actually, not to nerd myself out here, but I was in a backyard wrestling league, and we used to do that. Nice. And we would add commentary to the tapes. So call my own match.
You would do that, and it'd be the third or fourth generation dub by the time you added the music and the talking and all that. And it looked terrible, but you didn't care.
Nobody saw it. It's all right.
Right, because who are you going to show it to? There wasn't YouTube or anything. It was whoever you could get to come over to your house and watch it on the VCR.
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh, no, this is cool, bro. Totally. You want to do anything other than this?" I'm like, "No, let's watch the whole thing."
Yeah. For me, that was the real where I caught the bug was I would do these school projects and I would turn it into nonsense, make comedy videos and skits and things. But then I got to show it to the class. So it was a public, everybody had to sit through it. Bring in the TV with the VCR on the cart, and you could, push play, and everybody was kind of stuck there watching it. And sometimes I'd, get a passing grade, but I didn't really care.
Right.
It was for fun.
That's awesome. So after high school, do you end up going into like film school? Do you go a different route? Like where does like becoming a professional filmmaker come in?
Well, that didn't happen until much later because
Okay.
I thought for sure I was going to be a professional musician. I got out of
Awesome.
high school, no longer had access to that video camera, and
Mhm.
didn't get one. Still couldn't afford a video camera. So, um, and at that point, if I had the money, I would have spent it on a guitar. So, I was playing in bands, touring, recording, while kind of going to college part time in between that. So it took me a long time to graduate, and I was kind of just playing music and hoping that that would take off and that I would make it. And I would kind of pitch in here and there on the music video side, editing or filming with borrowed camcorders, but it really didn't stick. I was sure that music was what I was going to do. And so I really focused on that for a decade and a half.
Wow.
I got out of college and I'd gone to school for something called digital arts, which is kind of like a graphic design,
Yeah.
computer mess of a program, but it was fun. And when I got out, the job I could get was a Flash animator for
I totally remember
what
this.
was the coolest part of the internet at the time,
It was so cool.
which were the Flash intros on the websites that sometimes you could skip, but sometimes you couldn't skip.
Right.
And I would make those and other Flash-based things for a long, long time until Apple decided not to support Flash and Flash died. And that was when, it was kind of a natural transition because the internet was catching up and video was starting to stream. YouTube was a big thing by then, and you could put video on a website. And so I kind of just switched from making Flash animations to doing live action video shoots with like a cheap DSLR that I could get that would shoot decent looking video. And I would shoot commercials, real estate, music videos, weddings, just anything to try to make a buck because I couldn't do Flash anymore.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Jobs. Came in
Yeah.
Apple one day and was like, no more Flash. Let's get rid of it.
Exactly.
I don't know what I'm talking about, but you guys will make it happen.
Right. We'll need the next thing by tomorrow.
When all my songs on my device, we'll call it an iPod. Yeah. So let's talk about the music though, man. That's really interesting. So 10, you said like a decade and a half, like what, any, you want to jump into that? Is that a sore subject? I don't want to.
No. I still try to play in bands here and there. And I've played, I've been in and out of bands since, God, I probably played my first band in 1995. So like 26 years, not counting like when we were little kids and had a band, but did not have a band. But yeah, I've been playing in and out of bands. I'm primarily a trumpet player. So I played in ska bands and picked up guitar because a lot of people didn't think ska was that cool. And I needed a way to play in other bands. So I did that. But I played on a ton of records for other people, for bands I was in, songs I wrote, songs I didn't write. Lots of tours. I've toured Japan, China, the United States.
That's awesome.
It was close. I got close to doing it for a living, but it's really, 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 really hard to do that. So, it was always like my main focus was music. My side focus was what can I do to pay the bills?
Exactly. Yeah, I was in a band in high school and then a band in college, and we did like the whole, like the local VFW halls and like the bingo halls, the skate rinks, like we did all that stuff. The goal was always to play Warped Tour. Did you ever get to play Warped?
I did. It's funny. A lot of the bands I was in played Warped like the summer before I joined the band and just wouldn't stop talking about it. They'd be like, oh yeah, when we played Warped, oh, you weren't there. Right. And the only time I ever got to do it, I was living on the East Coast, and it was because a band I knew, I was friends with them through the local scene. I forget why, but their guitar player couldn't do it or had just left the band or something. So I filled in with a band and played a small stage at Warped Tour the one time. That's my My
That's
only
awesome.
time I learned one 20-minute set to play Warped Tour, and then
Hey, that was the dream for me. So I'm jealous that you got to even play on a small stage at Warp. That's so cool.
So obviously music is like a big part of who you are. And I noticed in the credit roll that you contributed musically to the Last Blockbuster. Did you not?
I did contribute heavily musically. And most of the music contributors were people I know from playing in bands. And we kind of, we didn't have a lot of money to pay for songs and to do music like that. So we kind of did it the old DIY, make it work way. What I did, I think one or two of the background music tracks I made, or were songs I already had from something else, but those go by real quickly. The main thing I did was when you hear the Smash Mouth song All Star in the movie, we cleared the rights to use the song, but we couldn't afford to use the original master recording. So that's me playing guitar, singing, doing all the parts, doing a cover of it because we could afford that.
That's really cool. It's a good way of DIYing it, like you're saying. And it is like when I saw that come across, I was just like, hell yeah.
I mean, here's what you got, right? It's like I've spent enough time building up that toolbox of skills that I might as well. I would have paid somebody else to do it, and I kind of know how to do it. So,
and you probably had fun doing it.
It was one of the more fun parts of making the movie was sitting here in my garage studio and singing Smash Mouth.
That's awesome.
I saw them live one time and they rocked the house. Like for being, Smash Mouth has that fan base about them.
They sure do.
And I didn't think I was going to enjoy the concert, but holy hell, did they just rock it.
Nice.
Well, they've been playing forever. They have to be pretty tight as a band at this point. So that's awesome. Cool. So obviously, I mean, you've lived in Bend, Oregon for a while. You must have passed the Blockbuster a million times. Like, were you somebody that was like a customer, or were you just curious about it? Like, how did we get into the documentary?
Well, when I first moved here, there was a second Blockbuster here in town, which is a small town. That's a lot. And this was like 2015, 2016. And the week I moved here, they were going out of business. They had the big clearance sale, big going out of business. And this was right down the street from where I live now. And before any of our furniture arrived, we had done the pods thing from the East Coast. I went to this clearance sale and just loaded up on DVDs and video games and things. So all we had in our house was these Blockbuster DVDs. And then the next week they were gone. I think it's a Hallmark store now or something. And I thought, oh, that's fun. We got here just in time for the Last Blockbuster to disappear. The one, because they had been gone from everywhere else since 2014. I knew that.
Right.
I loved it, and I used to go all the time. And you'd start to see the abandoned stores where they would leave the sign up because it cost more money to take it down. So like in Washington, D.C., where I lived, they had the big ticket-shaped sign that said Blockbuster, but they painted over it and now it said liquor store. But they didn't take the sign down. So when I drove around Bend and I would see this big Blockbuster sign, the second location for years, I just thought, oh, they couldn't afford to take the sign down. That's where the other, abandoned Blockbuster must be. It took about 2 years for me to finally let my curiosity get the better of me. And I stopped in, assuming it would be abandoned, and I would take some pictures for Instagram or something of this abandoned store, like maybe the box is still there or something. And then when I stopped and went in, it was like nothing had changed. It's like nobody told these people Blockbuster had gone out of business and had them going. And I went in and it was exactly how I remembered it. It was like going through a time warp to 2002 or something, except they had all the new movies. And it was crowded. There were people in there renting DVDs, and this was 2017 at this point. And I couldn't believe it. I had just finished my first documentary, and so I kind of fancied myself a filmmaker. And so I immediately had all these questions running through my head, contacted the owner of the store and said, can I film here? Can I start bringing cameras around? And they said, I guess, but I don't know why you would want to. There's still a dozen Blockbusters left. And at that time, I didn't know if there was a movie there or what it was. I just knew I was curious and maybe other people would be curious too. So that's really how it started, was just from me walking in and feeling that nostalgia, that, the smell was the same, and it felt like a warm, fuzzy blanket of a Friday night from 1998 or something. And I just was like, oh my God, this is so cool. And I would talk about, I was working on other movies at the time and other projects, but when I talked to other people, Blockbuster was the one that always stuck, where everybody was like, oh my God, really? There's one left? It's in your town? You've been?
Yeah.
What did you rent? Things like that. So I knew it was, if there was a movie there, it was going to be something that people would want to see. And it took a while of reaching out to the other stores. I thought maybe we would cover all 12, travel to Alaska, Texas, and it would be about these small towns that still have video stores. But they started closing so quickly from when we started. That's when I brought in my filmmaking partner on the project, Zeke, who's another filmmaker here in Bend, and there's not that many of us. So I was like, I'm going to need help. I think this is a good idea for a movie, and I think it's happening right now. Like, we need to get on this. Like within a year, they were down to 4 stores, I think. And
oh, wow.
It was just this store and the ones in Alaska. There were none, when we started, there were 3 more just in Oregon and a few in Texas and a lot in Alaska. And, it felt like we were kind of playing catch up as they would close, and we'd just be like, wait,
right,
we're just about to go film there and they're closed. And the pieces kind of just fell into place, where this store that we lived down the street from started to become the last one in America, and then the last one in the world. And it was, as a documentary filmmaker, you can't predict what's going to happen. We couldn't have made that happen. So it was very fortunate, that we had been filming there for 3 years by the time they were the last one, and we had that footage to kind of back up that story. And some of that was just luck. But some of it was just, that day 4 years ago of me going in and going, I think there's a story here, before there even was one, really, because it hadn't happened yet.
That's such an organic story arc. I'm just gonna start filming. I don't know what this is, and then it turns into this big thing. Gosh, it's been picked up by every major news source at this point. I've watched interviews of Sandy all over the country.
Yeah,
it seems like at this point. So that's crazy. So in JD, I know you watched the film this afternoon. Did that catch you by surprise when you were watching that they were just dropping one after another? Because it starts with 12, and then a couple years later she's like, oh, we're the last one.
Well, yeah, as a former Blockbuster employee myself, I was kind of surprised to see that there were just that many that were still hanging around to begin with. And I find it interesting the way that you talk about your inspiration, because I think that in itself, that's a great story of how, like Kyle's saying, that you organically went to the store, were inspired, drew awe from it, and turned it into this just excellent film. That's really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, it was very organic. All the pieces sort of fell into place, where when we started, we didn't know if Sandy was going to be a main character. We hadn't met her. Was she, interesting? How much of the store staying open is her doing, and what's the day-to-day like? And that all formed organically, just being around her. We were like, oh, this is her story, and this is her store, and she's been here since it was one of 9,000, and now it's one of one. and then as we're going and we're building up a movie about Blockbuster and we actually have some momentum going, then we start, reaching out to these celebrities who have these stories, and we pulled them in, and it kind of just all came together, not from a lack of hard work and perseverance, but a little bit of dumb luck for sure.
Gosh, yeah, it definitely couldn't be from a lack of effort, because this took you 3 years to put this together? 4?
Just about 4 years. Yeah.
Gosh, that's a long time to go making something, and finally you're like, okay, can we get some distribution? And I'd like to make like $1 off of this if I can. There's always that side of it, but Sandy's such a rock star in this. Like, as you get to know her, for somebody that maybe hasn't watched it yet, that has it, in their queue to watch it with Netflix. Tell our audience a little bit just about kind of what she means to that store, and a little bit about her story.
Yeah. So Sandy is the manager of all of the Blockbuster videos that are left in the world, which is just
which is fun.
But she calls herself the Blockbuster mom, and that's partly because most of the employees are teenagers and the same age as her children, and they kind of they're all very much like a family. All companies say that their employees are like a family, but this one actually is. And not for nothing, but a lot of the employees are related to Sandy. Most of her family has worked at this store or one of the other Blockbusters in town over the years. Her son, Ryan, is still there. He's running their website and their social media and shipping out orders every day. So it's really a family business, more than anyone would ever think a Blockbuster Video would be, because they were the big corporate giant. So when we met her and we found out how much of the store hanging on was because of her, we talked to the owners and they said, if Sandy wasn't here, we would just close tomorrow. It's really her. And she's doing things, and a lot of this evolved over the 4 years, because things that they used to get from corporate Blockbuster, the support, it all kind of went away. There used to be people to help with the computer system and big DVD distributors that would bring all the movies, and all that kind of fell by the wayside. And now Sandy is out buying DVDs every Tuesday morning at Target and Walmart like any of us would.
Crazy.
But it's for Blockbuster Video.
Right.
And when the computers break, she's taking them apart. And these are 90s IBM machines. She's swapping out RAM and other PCI cards and things like that, loading up the Blockbuster software off a floppy disk. She's got to be the leading authority on DOS-based 1992 IBM machines in the country.
Right.
No one else is using them. So it was that kind of thing that really, showed us that Sandy was the heart of the store. And if we're going to talk about this store in a movie, it's her that's keeping it going. And so many people ask, why this one, right? There were 9,000. Why is this the last one? And honestly, I think it's because of her, because it takes someone like that with that roll up your sleeves and get it done attitude to keep something like this going, when like I said, the people you used to call to get a new sign for the window because yours fell down and broke or got faded in the sun, they don't exist anymore.
Right.
So then she's going to a Kinko's, or they're probably gone too, but someplace that does printing makes a new sign. She just does it.
Right.
And most people would have given up by now, but not her.
When you talk with the owners, have there been any discussions of just giving her this business? It feels like it should be hers at this point. Nothing against the owners. I'm not trying to stir any pot here. It feels like that would be the right thing to do at this point. Hey, you now own the store. You're not the manager anymore.
Right. I don't know how any of that works. They still pay a lot of money to Dish to use the name, and they don't own the building, I don't think. So they're
still renting.
Rent. It's all the owners really own is the name and the, I don't know, corporation registration. I don't know how any of franchise stuff works, but
my family owns a restaurant. There's a lot of red tape there. So
sure, I don't know that Sandy would want that. she's pretty happy. Knitting the hats and.
Well, one of the things that I found, really interesting is you guys get into the history of the video rental business, and just from doing all your research and to just sum it up in a quick few minutes on a podcast, like what do you think initially like kind of led to the massive boom in video store rentals, and like they're popping up like every few minutes or something like that at some point?
Yeah. I think that was just Blockbusters. At one point, there was a new store every, 70 minutes or something. There's a news clip in the movie that references that. And that was when they were, going from 80 to 90,000 or something. Or 8,000 to 9,000. Not
90,000 employees, though. You're not too terribly far off.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who would work for them. In my opinion, and I was too young to have been renting movies when it started. I was like 4 years old in the 80s, when this really got going. But from our research and all that, the driving force was the cost of VHS tapes. The average person who could just, barely start to afford the VCR, they started to come into people's homes, but the tapes were still $80 to $150 each. So, it was cost prohibitive to own movies. And so people would kind of share them, and you would have these kind of underground lending store. I don't know what it was called, but the movie studios did not like that. And they took it all the way to the Supreme Court saying, you can't rent out or lend out our movies because you don't own them. You just bought one copy. We own the master. And the Supreme Court said, once you've bought something, you can do what you want with it. It's like same reason you can sell a used car, or you can, have a garage sale, or you can rent out your house as an Airbnb. You can rent, you've bought this tape, you can sell it to somebody, you can charge somebody $3 to watch it. You can't do public performance. Like you can't show it in a theater just off of that VHS tape, but you can sell or rent that VHS tape to whoever you want. And then once that Supreme Court case happened, it was safe to open a video store. So everybody did, because it was a great idea.
And business. I mean, VHS players were like $1,500.
Right. So a lot of places you could rent the VCR too.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Which was a big deal. You could go, and for maybe $15, you'd rent the VCR in a big suitcase. And then for a few bucks more, you'd rent some tapes, and you'd go home, and nobody knew how to plug it into a TV because that was all new. And they had those little hooks that you'd unscrew the thing, just like you were hooking up an Atari before the. Yeah.
I used to rent, I believe it was Sega Saturn from Blockbuster, because I was like, I want to get the system and try it out and see if it's worth getting rid of my Sega Genesis for. And ultimately I didn't. I stuck with the Genesis for a while and went right to 64. But did you guys, like, either, JD or Taylor, like, did you guys rent a lot of systems back in the day, or, what was kind of your Blockbuster rental habits?
I mean, for me, like, I never rented a system from Blockbuster, but I always marveled at the giant case that was on the end cap and wanted to. I just, I stuck with my Sega Genesis, and I rode that beast out for a very long time. And I still have it. So,
yeah, I definitely remember getting together with a bunch of friends, pooling our allowance, and renting, it would have been a Super Nintendo at the time, and like a hockey game and Mario Kart and all multiplayer games. And we would that's what we would do all weekend. We'd rent it on a Friday.
Yep.
bring it back on a Monday. And then also just me personally, once I did have video game systems, games were super expensive, but you could rent them. And this was before like save files and things. So you either got good enough to beat a game or you got bored. At least I would get bored pretty quickly. So it was a great way to try out a Super Nintendo game and be like, you know what? I guess I'm not going to finish Booger Man. I'm going to bring it back. And that was it. And some of them you would get into, they would have like like Mega Man, you could write down the code on a piece of paper and put it back in. So then you'd go rent it again the next weekend and put in the code and finish the game. But that was a big deal. I mean, I loved renting movies, but renting games, like at the time when I was doing it, movies were down to like $20 a VHS tape.
Right.
Games were still $50, $60, $40. And they were a couple bucks more to rent, I remember. Be like $3 for a movie and $5 for a game.
Mm-hmm.
But still worth it.
And for what it's worth, I don't know if you touched on this in any of your research or anything like that. Kyle's going to roll his eyes because I always tell this story. Blockbuster back in 1994 used to hold a national video game tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And I participated and I won.
Nice.
And in winning, the game was NBA Jam and Judge Dredd. And in winning, I got a year's free video game rentals. And it was effing awesome.
That is effing awesome. I love that.
I still have the certificate.
On the Genesis?
It was on the Genesis, yes.
Oh. Nice.
No, I love that
NBA
story.
Jam. Yeah, that was great.
I always pick the Pacers, Kyle.
There you go. What was
Reggie
it? Reggie
Miller.
and Rick Smits?
Yeah.
The Dutchman? Okay.
Reggie Miller was just untouchable from the arc. He just could not miss, and then he's on fire, and then you're done.
Right. Yeah, well, there's no Jordan, so you can get away with Reggie Miller.
Sure.
That's awesome. So, as the movie kind of plays on, eventually, we get into the fall of Blockbuster. And one of the thoughts in my head going into this was, well, they died because of like Netflix or Redbox, and that's not really the case. Like that was probably one of my biggest takeaways. I mean, yeah, that's part of the reason they failed with competition, but it wasn't really like the sole reason. And when you start unpacking, like, did you know that going in, or was that something you uncovered as you were researching too?
That was something we uncovered pretty early on, but I definitely went into it thinking Netflix and Redbox were what put Blockbuster out of business. And I wasn't entirely wrong, but I was mostly wrong.
Right.
And it's a lot more complicated than I'm qualified to explain. It's all in the movie for anybody who's really curious. And if you haven't seen it, see it. But it kind of just boils down to hubris. People just thinking they were too big to fail and making kind of batshit bonkers decisions that are not good decisions. It was a long string of them from a long time. And actually, as you see in the movie, a lot of people, Blockbuster changed hands, at least at the CEO level, more than you would think for a company that seemed to be doing well on paper. But all that stuff I didn't know that. And, we didn't set out to make like a business school history, like the definitive history of Blockbuster. We set out to tell Sandy's story and, sort of try to convey our love for the era of physical media and, what are we losing as a society when these stores go away? That was our big mission statement. But as we learned all this crazy business school stuff, we're like, well, that's got to go in. I mean, people are going to want to know what happened. And I do think it's very interesting that it's not what people think. Like the timeline, if you look at it, Blockbuster was doomed before Netflix even really started streaming.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
They were still mailing DVDs.
Mm-hmm.
So to blame Netflix for Blockbuster going out of business is ridiculous. And then, we were very fortunate that someone at Netflix had a pretty good sense of humor, because when the movie came around to them, the trailer talks about Netflix like 3 times, and they still were kind of thankfully open to putting it on their platform. And I think because they weren't the cause of the demise, if they actually had put Blockbuster out of business, they never would have put our movie on there.
Yeah, probably not. And yeah, I was in college right around the time that Blockbuster started to dip. It was, I believe, my junior year. I wrote a paper in business class about how I thought Blockbuster would be out of business in 10 years and Redbox would be the big thing. And I remember explaining to people in the class, they were like, well, hold on. So you go to like the grocery store and there's this video rental thing and you just like swipe your debit card and you just bring it back the next day? I'm like, yeah. They're like, it's only $1. I'm like, yeah. So at that point, like, it was really Redbox that I thought probably posed like the biggest competition for Blockbuster. And I remember starting to see those like blue Blockbuster kiosks like start to pop up, and like they were positioned to like be a huge player in the digital space and doing like less expensive rentals, and was just like you said, terrible business decisions that like led to their downfall.
Well, I mean, shit. I not to rag on you at all a little bit, Kyle, but I'm going to. But
go ahead.
I mean, the idea of putting video rentals into a grocery store isn't new, because at least in the Chicagoland area, like Dominic's was I don't know how far their reach was, but they had their own video stores in the grocery store where you go get what you're doing and then you grab a video and then you check out. I mean, the model was always there for that. And obviously Redbox is still clinging on and has a market of people that are encouraged and engaged with them. So it's just, I mean, the whole history of video rental is just, and I'd love that you touched on that in the documentary, because it's just so fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, when I was up here in Oregon, the video rental place that I could get to, and it was like a half-mile walk or something, was in a gas station. It was such a small town. There was one store. It was the general store, the gas station. And in the back, they had one wall of VHS tapes, and they maybe had 50. And it was never more than one copy of each. So I would walk down there, and I'm sure over the years, I watched every single one of those movies, some of them more than once, because it's what there was. But yeah, like you're saying, the idea of video rentals in a grocery store is nothing new. And if you go to like smaller towns, especially here, like coastal towns, they'll still rent DVDs in the grocery store.
Yep.
Because they don't even have Redbox there. They just they'll go buy 4 copies of the new Star Wars or the new Avengers and rent them out, because it's still a viable business model in the towns with slower internet and with less, tech savvy people. I mean, it's still a thing. And it's good that it's still a thing.
Yeah, it is.
I agree.
I mean, when it comes down to it, I still collect DVDs and Blu-rays for the same reason why I won't buy a Kindle. I like to hold, feel, and enjoy that possession and ownership over what I'm paying for. Like, you actually get something out of it. Like, you can't beat that. At least for like our generation, like, that's not going away for a while still.
You say that, but over the past 4 years, as I've been keeping an eye on it, the only couple of places that still carry DVDs, at least around here, are Best Buy, Target, and Walmart. Yeah. And I've seen over the past few years the DVD aisle shrink from like 3 aisles with box sets and TV shows and new releases and old movies and all the things, to now it's 1 aisle, and half of one side is vinyl records, because those are popular now, and another part is action figures based on Stranger Things, because those are popular now. And the movies are like, you can get the Avengers movies and maybe one new drama that just came out. It'll be on the shelf for a couple weeks and then it's gone. And I think that's a trend. If you follow that to its inevitable conclusion, I guess we can buy DVDs on Amazon as long as they keep making them, but
it doesn't look good.
It doesn't look good.
No.
It's rough. And I think part of that tangible feeling, like movies being an object, like books being an object, that's something I'm afraid that we're losing as a society. And I mean, I don't know what more I can do. I made a whole movie about it. I'm doing my part.
Well, no,
doing your best.
You're fighting for the good. You're fighting the good fight, and it's worth noting too, with everything that's gone on with COVID over the last year, that same conversation applies to movie theaters.
Yes.
Yeah.
So where do they stand 6 months, 12 months, 6 years out?
Yeah.
Are we losing that completely? Is this a Black Mirror episode where we're just plugging in?
I hope not.
I feel like the drive-in movie theater is like the records now. Like these drive-in movie theaters are making a huge comeback, and they're nostalgic, and everybody wants to take their family to them, and that's awesome. I hope that continues for a long time. But yeah, I'm huge on going to the movie theater. You know, we watched Godzilla vs. Kong today, and I was like, I couldn't focus. I was looking at my phone. I was like, I need to be in a dark room with some guy eating way too much popcorn and like making weird wheezing noises. Like I need something else than just sitting in my house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I miss movie theaters the most of everything, from COVID. I still, for work, I'll mask up and go to Blockbuster Video so I don't miss the video store.
Nice.
But that's for work, and that's an essential service, I'm sure. But
right.
But no, I haven't been. The only movie I've been to was we did show our movie at the drive-in here that popped up last summer, and that was great. But I miss movie theaters so bad, and I had almost kind of gotten over it. Like, oh, it's okay. Now it's been a full year since I saw a movie, and it's whatever. I'll go eventually. It's not the thing I miss the most. And then Godzilla vs. Kong came out, and it was the strongest reminder of why I miss movie theaters. This movie doesn't work on my TV, and I have a big TV with loud speakers, and I'm still just like, this isn't what this is supposed to be. I'm supposed to be in a dark room. It's supposed to be too loud, and I'm supposed to yell at the exciting part, and the other people in the room also yell.
Right.
And it's a shared experience.
Exactly. And you hit on that in the documentary as well. The factor of community that you get when you're in the store, when you're looking at the videos, when you're seeing Zach's picks. And I mean, it's directly applicable to the movie theater experience. When you hear somebody next to you laugh, chances are you're going to laugh, and it's contagious.
Yeah, it was rough showing our movie at the drive-in, and I've done other movies and seen them in theaters with people, and I love when everybody laughs or makes any other sound. It's exciting. It's why you make movies. It's like we get to kind of pull the strings and everybody laughs, and it's great. And this movie has parts in it that I know people laugh at, but when we saw it at the drive-in, you can't hear anybody in their car. And if they really like a part, they all honk. And that's terrifying. Just a bunch of cars honking.
It's your anxiety. You're like,
yeah, growing up in a big city, if somebody honked, you were about to get hit by a car.
Right.
So it's not pleasant. So while I think the drive-in is great, it is missing that sense of community because you're like isolated in your car.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's like being in a space pod.
Yeah.
Yeah, no good. I still love the drive-in though. I'll sit outside.
Oh, yeah.
I don't care. But yeah, to be corny for a second, since we are the Back in Time podcast, if we could get into a DeLorean, go back to mid 2000s, and somehow right the ship for Blockbuster where they don't take this massive fall. If we were living in a world where there was no Netflix because Blockbuster bought them for really cheap, what do you think they would be doing? Like, would there be more stores? Are they just Netflix and digital only? Like, where do you think they would be in 2021?
That's interesting, because there isn't really a basis for comparison.
Right.
Like a brick and mortar that went digital and kept their brick and mortar stores, but used them for some other purpose. You know, I think the model would have been, or should have been, where, you know, and they tried mailing DVDs, and then they did almost try to get into streaming. You know, old Rokus have a Blockbuster button on the remote.
Yep.
You could rent movies through them. And I think it'd be interesting. I have a theory that we'd be better off if Blockbuster had survived, because they were studio agnostic. You know, they were friends with everybody who made every movie. And if they had a streaming service that would be, I think, bigger than Netflix, which is the current number one, they would have those relationships. So instead of having to have an HBO Max, a Paramount Plus, a Hulu, a Netflix, a Amazon, there may be a world where it's just you turn on your TV, you go to Blockbuster, and it's all the movies. And maybe there'd be another one for TV, because Blockbuster was known for movies, but we don't have that now. We don't have one catch-all place that has all the movies, which is what Blockbuster was known for at the time. That was their whole shtick.
So I've got a little side quest question based off of that. In the dating scene part, where the actors are going into the movie and they're picking out their movies and they're talking about, what do we watch? Is it a romance night? There's a part where I think it's the guy is holding a copy of the movie Frogs. Is that intentional? Did you intentionally have him pick up Frogs? Because I own that movie and it's ridiculous.
So this is the first I'm hearing that that's the movie he picks up. I'm not that detail oriented, I guess.
I was just like, both my wife and I were just like, that's the DVD of Frogs. And we both, like, our eyes just went wide and we're just like, holy cow, 1972's Frogs.
I would have to ask the guy who did that, but I think we were really just telling him, like, walk halfway down the aisle and pick up a movie. And I don't think he was thinking too hard about it.
Well, it resonated directly with me. So good job.
I love that. I love the fact that because we filmed in a Blockbuster, there are so many movies, and we've heard from so many people that are like, oh man, yeah. When they picked up the Paul Blart 2, that was
Paul Blart 2.
That's the one I never returned and got kicked out of Blockbuster. You know, it's always about the late fees.
What a horrible way to get kicked out of Blockbuster over Paul Blart 2. Ugh.
And that's somebody's story. Somebody, you know, for every movie that, you know, is great or isn't, there's somebody whose favorite movie it is.
Right.
Which is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I love it.
What's so great about movies in general.
Yes.
So knowing that you still go there and rent movies and everything, are they starting to get into VHS? Because VHS is kind of making a comeback now, and people are buying up tapes. Like, are they looking into, like, renting old VHS tapes there?
They don't rent them. For whatever reason, they're not set up for it. I don't think they've ever thought about going back to the VHS days, although they're still primarily DVD and very few Blu-rays, which is mind-boggling to me as a movie lover. It's like, why not have it in the best possible format? And it's just because supply and demand, the customers, everybody has a DVD player, and people who have Blu-ray players, half of them don't know they have Blu-ray players.
Right.
Nobody bought one. It's like, oh, I think my waffle iron also plays Blu-rays. That kind of thing. But they do have VHS now that people donate. A lot of people around here and people from all over the world will mail them in as like a gesture to help keep the store open, I suppose. Yeah. And it's also, at least here, like Goodwill doesn't take VHS tapes anymore. And Blockbuster is the only place you can donate. So people donate their VHS collections, and what they do is they still have a huge stock of old Blockbuster stickers, like price tag stickers. So they'll put a Blockbuster sticker on it, throw them in a bin, and they just sell the VHS tapes. And, you know, weirdos like me go in there, and I can't leave there without buying one or two tapes because they're different every time. You know, if you're actually a VHS collector, which I recommend because it's about the cheapest thing you can collect. They're 25 cents in a lot of these thrift stores. But yeah, I'll pick up a tape almost every time I'm in there, and it's great for me. I have a VCR set up. I can watch these movies, and I don't have to return them. I do want to return them. It's just me donating it back so they can sell it to somebody else.
So, serious question: does that apply to laser discs?
It does not. They have maybe one laser disc in the store. There's like a museum section of the store now. I personally do have a laser disc collection that I recently obtained, and I have a working laser disc player, although it's a pain in the butt and I hate flipping over a movie halfway through.
It's so annoying.
But I'm pretty determined to have a kick-ass laser disc collection, whether it's for watching or just because I like vinyl records too. I like movies being a big thing, and Laserdisc was like the biggest thing a movie ever was.
Yeah, heck yeah. For what it's worth, I own Jurassic Park on VHS, Laserdisc, DVD, and Blu-ray. I just got to get it on HD DVD.
For me, it's Star Wars and Back to the Future. I have all three in all 5 formats. You just said 6? Several VHSs of
There we go.
been re-released so many times, but the laser discs are the most like exciting because nobody has all the Back to the Futures on Laserdisc. I mean, yes, a lot of people do, but
I'm going into eBay right now, looking that up.
I was going to say, I've got some of the Star Wars on Laserdisc, but I do have the version of the original trilogy on DVD that George Lucas didn't tinker with.
Nice.
So that's a collectible, and we got it at Half Price Books. It was mismarked, and we took that right away.
Nice.
That's great. Well, Taylor, now that the film's out on Netflix, what's next for you, man? Do you have an idea of what you want to do in the future? Do you want to get into films? Are we going with another documentary?
I mean, I don't know.
It's tough questions.
It's been a global pandemic the whole time this movie has been out. So
yeah,
I'm writing scripts. I'm writing documentary ideas down on paper so I don't forget them, but I got nothing actually going. You'd be surprised when you have a documentary on Netflix that does well, that people have heard of, how many people that you don't remember ever meeting want to tell you what the next great documentary is going to be.
Of course.
And how, have you heard about blah, 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 blah. So I've got a stack of pitches coming in that are varying levels of interesting, and I really don't know. I just need the pandemic to get done, get vaccinated, get out in the world. At this point, that's what I'm looking forward to, is seeing people again.
There you go. Awesome. Well, I've got some rapid fire questions, and then we'll kind of close this thing up.
Cool.
And JD, I'll let you kind of play along here as well. So I'll start with you, Taylor. What's the best hidden gem movie that you ever rented from Blockbuster?
Hidden gem. That's not rapid fire. That's deep.
That is a deep one. You're cheating, Kyle.
Hidden gem.
I've got one. Taylor, if you want, I can cut in because I got
go for
one.
it. Let me think.
So it's a hidden gem movie. It's pretentious as hell, and you make fun of people in the documentary that pick out French films. But there was a French film that I saw on the shelf in Blockbuster called La Moustache, about this guy who cuts off his mustache, and then everybody pretends that he never had a mustache. So he goes crazy and moves to Bangkok.
That sounds awful.
I'd love it.
Awesome.
I bought it.
Awesome.
I bought it. It's on my DVD shelf.
For me, Blockbuster was always the place you went for the big Hollywood hit movies.
Yeah.
And I was so into movies when I was of renting age that I would go to the local indie store to find the cool hidden gems, and then go to Blockbuster because they'd be only ones who had a copy of The Matrix or a copy of, Terminator 2 or whatever the thing was that I had to see. And so I think my favorite from hidden gems from the real mom and pop indie stores was probably Cannibal the Musical.
Okay.
From the South Park dudes, the old Trauma.
I remember that was fun.
Trauma gem.
Yeah, there you go. Mine was Monster Squad. I found that at
Oh, nice.
Blockbuster and just fell in love with that movie, which is also another great documentary.
I
Which
haven't
is, I
seen
think,
that one
on
yet.
Amazon. It's called Wolfman's Got Nards. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. I
Nice.
love
I'll
it.
check that out.
Worst movie you ever rented at Blockbuster. JD, you're first.
It's rapid fire, so I'm going to say School for Scoundrels.
All right, Taylor, you got one in the chamber?
I don't like to say bad things about movies. Movies are hard to make, and if you made a movie, great. And if I rented it on accident, I probably enjoyed it because I didn't have so many options like we do now, and I would convince myself that it was good anyway.
Damn, now I look like shit.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
I'm sorry, John. I know John Hader's listening. I'm sorry.
I mean, yeah, the worst movie I rented from Blockbuster is probably better than the average movie I come across on streaming now.
Okay.
That's
a
a
great
good
answer.
point. I like
Great
that.
answer. Terrible question for
Go
me.
and get it.
There you go. Okay. More fun stuff. Favorite candy, JD, from the store?
Butterfinger BBs.
Oh, solid.
Oh, man. I mean, I forgot about Butterfinger BBs, but that's definitely also my answer now. But I'll go with Sour Patch Kids, so we have something else in there.
Nice.
I'm a bunch of crunch.
Yeah, you are.
Well, we got them all covered there. Solid. All right. And then this one's more specifically for Taylor. What was your first paying job as a teenager?
I worked at my dad's restaurant. I washed dishes, kind of learned to cook a little bit and did that. And that was like my only paying job until I was a Flash animator years later.
That's not, what kind of restaurant was it?
Burgers and fish and stuff. It was in that same small town with the gas station that rented movies. So
there you go. Awesome.
Not too eclectic.
And what was the make and model of your first car?
I was a 1984 Subaru GL sedan that had all-wheel drive, but was very, very small. And then I painted flames on it. And
Yes.
This was my grandfather's car that I was handed down. Painted flames, put like the tassels up on the ceiling. And
yeah, you did.
Spent more on the CD player with the removable faceplate and the subwoofer in the trunk than the car was worth.
All you're missing is the licorice machine, like Wayne's World.
I didn't have that.
That's so cool. All right. Well, that's it, man. I just wanted to have a little fun at the end with some random questions, but we appreciate you coming on, man. Go ahead and plug your social media and where people can follow you and kind of check out what you're going to be doing in the future.
Yeah, so I'm the one running the Last Blockbuster social medias, and that's where you can find me most often these days. It's Last Blockbuster Movie on Instagram and Facebook, Last Blockbuster on TikTok, and Last Block Doc on Twitter.
All right. Well, we appreciate you coming on the show. Again, we both absolutely love the movie. I watched it twice, and unfortunately, JD, there you go. I love that.
Check it out. The Last Blockbuster. Check it out. Yup, there it is. It's worth a watch, audience. Taylor, you're effing awesome.
You are.
Yep.
If you still have your Blockbuster card, tweet at us, show us your picture, tag Taylor in it. On the back of the card, there's just a random number written down. That's your membership number. There was nothing official about any of this. And that number linked to your late fees.
Yep.
There you go.
Felt official when they said you owed them $18.99 for not bringing back Wayne's World 2.
Oh my God. We still have the copies of Teen Wolf and Teen Wolf 2 on VHS that we rented in college and never returned.
There we go. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for listening. Subscribe to the channel here, or if you're listening to the audio version, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music. But thank you to our guest, Taylor, for coming on to talk about his film. Everybody go stream it right now on Netflix and have a good rest of the evening. See ya.